Hello, I am Reasonable Rex, the T-Rex you can trust. Isonzo, or Socha, depending on where you come from and what language you speak, is a 138 kilometer, or 86 if you're going in freedom units of miles, long river. Isonzo flows through western Slovenia and into northeastern Italy, and it's a pretty large river located in an alpine region. The sources of it is the Trenta Valley and the Julian Alp in the northwestern Slovenia. And before World War I, it ran parallel to the border between the Kingdom of Italy and the Astro-Hungarian Empire. But during World War I, it was the scene of bitter fighting between the two countries. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Not the river itself, but the game Isonzo. Isonzo is a first-person online shooter with a 48-person lobby, 24 on each side, and populates the server with bots so that even if you're really bad at the game, you're probably going to have someone you can shoot and take down so that you don't feel so bad when the match is over. The game's map cover the 12 battles between the Austro-Hungarian and Italian armies during World War I. Most of this territory is now present-day Slovenia. This game is a very unique shooter. It's not big, it's made by a small company, and is actually their third World War I shooter. Isonzo was made by Black Mill Games, their first two games being Tannenberg, the Eastern Front, and Verdun, the Western Front. I've not played these two as they have aged, and Isonzo actually released pretty recently, being released on September 13th, 2022. Being a game about World War I means that most of the rifles are bolt action. It also relegates each army to have weapons they would actually use, so there's no going for a meta build. It also has a class system similar to that of Hell Let Loose, where each class has specific things it's very good at and weapons that accommodate that. We'll go over those in a minute. Also, since it's a World War I shooter and it's set in some of the most regal of countries, there are no common fatigues, not really. So you get to customize your soldiers. This means you get the fanciest of facial hair. You can also get paid DLC, which gives you a lot more options. You can also add very cool things, such as head bandages, cigarettes, pipes, glasses, and for each uniform type that you customize, if you switch to another uniform type, customize it, and then switch back to the other one, your previous customizations stay. So technically you have a bunch of outfit loadouts you can switch between. Because let's be honest here, who doesn't like playing dress-up Barbie with their World War I soldiers? The game has a semi-thriving community. There's been a couple of times I've been in full lobbies, but most of the time it's just a few people and the rest is filled out by bots. The bots can be dangerous. They can whip shot you and take you out in one hit, and they will overrun you. You are equipped with a bolt-action rifle. You're not going to gun them down like zombies in a horde game. They're just tough enough to be annoying, but not so annoying that they feel unfair. They will get some shots off that will make you go, that's not possible, that sucks, that's stupid, I hate this. And then there'll be other times where you mow them down endlessly and you feel like a god. Each match is objective-based, and there are only two types of objectives. Either defend or take over a point, depending on which side you're on, or defend or destroy an objective. The first one's rather simple to explain. There's a position. If you're the defenders, you're trying not to let the enemy take it. If you're the enemy, you're trying to get as many people on there as you can to flip it to your side. When you flip it to your side, the defenders can no longer use it as a spawn point, but they can retake it. The destroy objective is usually a artillery system or an important bunker where the attackers have to make their way to it, set an explosive charge, and defend it long enough to explode. The defenders can, of course, disarm it. Disarming also pauses the fuse, so if it has 0.5 seconds till it's going to explode and someone starts defusing it and completes it, doesn't matter how long that defusing animation is, it's fine. This adds a level of intelligence and planning to the game because as an attacker, you only have so many respawns. Every time a soldier is dropped, be it a bot or a player, that number goes down by 1. If you run out of them, that's it for the attackers. So I've found that usually in full player lobbies, usually it's best to tackle the destroy objectives first, because if they go down, they're gone. There's no way the defenders can rebuild them. But if you take a point, the defenders can retake them. And if you spend a lot of your reinforcements trying to destroy the objective, and manage to do that and then have to move on to the capture, so long as you're contesting it, you go into overtime. You technically have infinite reinforcements. That's the basic overlook of the game. Let's get into the classes now, because that's what really makes this game special in my opinion. If you're going to fight a war, you're going to need soldiers, and nothing's more bread and butter than the Rifleman. While this class might get overlooked as being too simple or too basic, it actually has a lot of use and variety. While it is just simply the shoot man, go to point, go do objective, it has a lot of power when you unlock some of its later things. Since this is the first class, I'll be talking about the fact that whenever you pick a class, you level up by playing it. At certain levels, you unlock challenges. Some are very simple. The Rifleman, for a matter of fact, has one that's get points for resupplying soldiers or bandaging wounds, yours or other people's, be the bots or other players. I'll get into what resupply is in a moment, but some of them are annoyingly tough. For example, the Rifleman has one that is to capture or retake a point 3 times. Not the exact same point 3 times, you just have to do this 3 times. I have tried everything to get this, and I set at 2 at the moment, and it took me forever to get there. I even tried doing bot-only matches by creating a private lobby that only I had access to, and I just could never take a point. The bots never got there to also threaten the point for me to hold it on the defender's side. So I'm just trapped in limbo trying to get this thing done. The Rifleman's skills may seem basic as they get access to very basic rifles for their class. They do eventually get access to the gas-propelled grenades. Now, these are hard to aim, and it is recommended that you crouch to aim, and they take a long time to both load up for the first time and reload after each shot. I've also noticed that they don't seem to do that much damage in a big AoE, so you want people clustered. However, a well-placed shot with one of these will clear out a trench and allow you and other players or bots to push forward. I mentioned resupply earlier. Riflemen have first a perk that allows them to build a ammo box that people can grab ammo from. This is useful, especially whenever you're doing something like the officer class because they have limited flares, or the Mountaineer because they have limited flares. We'll get into those later, don't worry. Also, you have the ability to change a secondary into a ammunition box that you can carry around the battlefield. This will allow you to resupply soldiers instead of building a stationary point. This means if you're working in tandem, you can just follow around your officer and keep resupplying them as they throw their flares out. You also get a nice perk that allows you to count as more people towards taking a point. I've been using this to try and get that challenge done, but I keep getting shot whenever I try. I was very close to getting it done the other day, and I got shot through the wall by a bot. Told you, they can be annoying. While the Rifleman may seem like a sort of jack of all trades, master of none, a good Rifleman can hold a point longer than any other class, because once their specialized thing is run out, they're done for, like the assaults and their automatics, which we'll get into later. I'm saying that a lot, but it's because the Rifleman's the first one. Riflemen are dependable and reliable. It's also what every bot spawns in as, so be prepared for that. While they may not be the shiniest unit, they are very useful. So don't overlook your Riflemen. They can actually be fun to play since they get reliable weapons just like their class. And if you've come home from a hard day of work and you don't want to think, you just want to turn your brain off, pick this class. Rifleman's job is to take down soldiers, take territory, or hold it. While the Rifleman might be the most basic of the classes, the Officer is the complete opposite. While they don't carry around much firepower, they have a late game challenge where you can finally put some rifles in their hands. Otherwise, they usually just run around with pistols. Pistols have some decent power because they have the ability to fire multiple times before needing to be reloaded, but the reload animation is pretty long and a lot of those pistols don't really do that much damage, requiring 2 to even 3 shots to drop a soldier. They do have revolvers, which are a one-shot kill in most cases. However, the reload animation on them is extensive. While officers don't provide a lot of frontline presence, they are probably the most useful unit in the game, and they're very special. Every unit or class has limitations. For example, when I was talking about the Rifleman, the gas-powered grenades that you can attach to the end of the rifle, only 2 people on a team can have that out of the entire team. This is to prevent overpowered uses of it. You don't want to face 9 to 10 people shooting grenades at you. Officers don't have this limitation because there can only be 2 officers and that is it. But what makes officers so powerful, you're probably saying? They have pistols, which are good, I guess, but what really makes them devastating? It's a combination of 2 very simple things: a whistle and a flare gun. The whistle is unique because it allows you to place a marker on the map and designate it as an attack or defend point. While other players may not pay attention to this, if a player is trying to help out with the push, that'll be very useful for them. I don't really know how it affects bots. I don't know if bots are naturally drawn to orders, but I throw them out anyway just in case it is true. The whistle also has a secondary function, which is its most powerful and most useful function, and probably one of the best things in the entire game. That's to give the charge order. When you give the charge order, there is no respawn timer. That means people trying to hold a point desperately can respawn instantly, which is extremely useful if they have a squad member nearby, meaning they can spawn pretty close to the objective. Same for attack. If you're trying to take a point or push through a choke point, then having the ability to instantly respawn and keep throwing bodies at it is extremely valuable. The only downside to this is that one of the officer's perks reduces their cooldowns, and the whistle is the most powerful ability in the game. I don't think anything is stronger than the ability to keep players coming back quicker, which means people, if you're in a full lobby, are constantly asking for the whistle even if you just used it. And since you don't want to have a 100-second cooldown on that charge, it kind of relegates you to using that ability. There are other perks with the officer that are interesting, like the ability to spawn off other squads, which means that if your entire squad is wiped, you could spawn off another squad and then have your squad spawn off you, completely realigning a push within seconds, or the ability to make the soldiers around you better at either reinforcing or destroying things. I have very little experience with these though, because like I said, the ability to get the whistle every 50 seconds instead of every 100 is just far too valuable. The second weapon in the officer's repertoire of dangerous items is the flare gun. You get 2 shots, and if you fire them consecutively, it'll actually power up the call-in that you use on the flare. I, however, like to wait for the flare to land so that I can have multiple angles for what I'm about to call in. Once you've launched your flares, it'll mark on the map, and you can use other flares that other officers have called in. And these flares tend to stay for quite a while. I don't know if there's a limit to them or a time limit. Wherever you've placed a flare, if you go to one of the command tables, which are designated by a little telephone icon, you can interact with it and call in the big gun, quite literally. You have 3 columns, one dedicated to artillery. These can be as simple as a mortar shelling in the area, which does decent damage and can kill if it's a direct hit, all the way up to a creeping barrage, where artillery strikes, and then strikes slightly forward, and then slightly forward again, allowing you to hit the enemy while your soldiers push up behind it. The second one is all about chemical warfare. This has things very hurtful, such as mustard gas being the strongest one. This is World War I, so gas mask is an item. Everyone can put it on, but it takes time and it limits some abilities like the whistles. They also have things that seem minor, such as smoke or creeping smoke, but these are quite useful. A lot of people envision smoke being used differently than it's actually used, where they want to smoke their own teammates so that they can't be seen, but that also means your teammates cannot see. It's better to smoke the enemy so they can't see your approach if you're on attack. If you're defending, then you want to drop a line of smoke between you and whatever you're defending, so the enemies have to push through it to see you and you can drop them. Lastly is calling in the planes. The most basic and easiest and quickest to use version of this is a recon that marks enemies on the map. It doesn't follow where they're marked, it just marks where they're at when the plane goes over. It is useful for someone on a mortar or perhaps someone to set up a flare, but otherwise I don't really use this one that much, especially if you got a Mountaineer. Don't worry, we'll talk about that later. And the final version is a bombing run, which is the most devastating thing in the game. Chemical attacks can get you a lot of kills because bots tend to wander into it and not put their gas mask on. It's a good way to thin out the bots on an area, but it's hard to see in the gas mask and it can be a bit of a hindrance to your own soldiers. And obviously, your own bots are going to wander in there without a gas mask on and fall victim to it. But a bombing run just devastates everything in an area. It's always multiple kills unless you're just aiming where no one's at. Officers also have the ability to draw on the map to attempt to give orders on which way to push. This can be either useful or annoying. Either other players are going to see this and go, I just don't want to do that, I'm doing my own thing. Or perhaps an officer is changing it too much and it's confusing and annoying and it's like, we want to push as a team, please stop drawing all over the map. Officers are highly valuable, and often it's best as an officer to stay back. You don't want to die too easily, because you're better suited to whistling to get your soldiers to push forward and getting them respawning quicker, as well as calling in reinforcements via artillery, chemical attacks, or planes. However, there is a limited range on your flare, so you're going to have to push up eventually. And don't be afraid to whip that pistol out and show them how you got that high rank officer. An officer is definitely the linchpin in the attack and defense, and if played correctly can be the most powerful unit on a team. However, if they're played incorrectly, they can just be a crutch that causes you to collapse. I recommend everyone get some playtime with the officer if you pick up this game, because for me, it's the class I find myself switching to most. It's the only one I've maxed out and completed every challenge for. It's a lot of fun. While officers might be the powerful one in the back, sending out orders, calling down death from above, there's nobody else you want on your side if you're pushing into enemy trenches or trying to hold off against a wave of attackers than the assault. The assault is all about frontline combat. They live and thrive in the battle. They start off simple enough with a bolt action rifle and the ability that's pretty unique to chug down what I hope and assume is water, but it is World War I, maybe that's a wine ration. After chugging this down, you get unlimited sprint and you speed up. This allows you to bull rush the enemy and get in there. However, assault become dangerous as you level up and complete their challenges. First off, they get access to the grenades. Grenades are extremely dangerous. There is no indicator that a grenade has been thrown. You just have to see it and remember where it is, because those fuses are long. Unless they cook them, you'll never know. It could land in front of you and you have moments to run away. Or it can land in front of you and you have minutes and you're fine. Or it can land in front of you, you run away, forget it exists because it's still burning down the fuse, come back forward and get blown to pieces. Assaults also get the ability to build the grenade box. Any class that has grenades they can use can refill here. Of course, it is on a timer because nobody wants to have an infinite supply of grenades getting chucked at them. Although that strategy is still used, where an assault will build a grenade case and then several classes with grenades will line up around it and just chunk them into the enemy trench they're trying to overtake. If that wasn't bad enough, the Assault is the only class to get access to automatics. Automatics are interesting. Of course, this is the time and era of the bolt-action rifle or semi-automatic weapons. I mentioned how the rifles are very powerful, but the pistols of the officer class can be dangerous because they can fire multiple times before needing to be loaded. Now imagine that, but combined. Assault weapons that are automatic will kill you very quickly and can fire very rapidly and many times before they need reloading. There is a downside, however. Automatics obviously take a very long time to reload. This sets you up to be a target as you're trying to reload. Also, if you're trying to fire from the hip, even if you're aiming down sights, good luck hitting anything. You're going to be spraying and praying all over the place. It is best to be next to a structure for the bipod to attach. So crouch next to a trench wall or just standing next to a tall wall. This will increase your accuracy and allow you to actually hit things. Or you could just go prone. But there's lots of areas in the game where you just simply cannot go prone. The game just doesn't allow it. This is what makes the assault class very dangerous at defending and attacking. An attacker assault with an automatic weapon could just trudge down a trench firing wildly because they're going to hit something eventually. Or a defending assault with an automatic weapon can take up a position and just pump out burst fire as enemy comes up, thinning the numbers and keeping them from pushing for a long time, allowing other areas to be built up. If that's not terrifying enough, assaults can also get access to a pistol of their own, which we've already talked about the upsides and downsides of that, but they can get a secondary that is a melee weapon. And you might be scoffing, saying, a melee weapon? There's guns, I'm gonna get shot. And yes, you might actually get shot, but you gotta remember, this is World War I. It's functioning off basically Warhammer rules. You have bayonets attached to your rifles, and these are usually a one-hit kill. Weapons without bayonets are usually you smacking the gun against them and can take 2 to 3 hits to kill. You can also use your shovel that's used to build things to attack with melee. Or, silly things like the bandage in your hand you just use to wrap up your bleeding leg. Sure, beat someone to death with it. But the melee weapons that the assault class and one other class get access to don't have a cooldown on their swings. All the other things I just mentioned do. This means that if you stab someone who runs up on you with your bayonet and someone else runs up on you, guess what? Now you're about to get stabbed. However, with the melee weapon that the assault class get, you become a living Beyblade as you run through a trench, cutting people down. This, combined with the well-placed smoke, is terrifying. Assaults are the devastating unit. They're the heavy ones. They're that guy. They can be terrifying whenever you're trying to push into a position they're covering or try to hold back from getting into the area you're trying to protect. But much like I mentioned before, they do have their downsides. The automatic weapons usually don't come with reloads, and if they do, they take forever. With the poor accuracy, that means if you run up on them, they're going to have a hard time dropping you. And even if they do manage to, they might spend so much ammo that the guy behind you gets right up on them. They could switch to a melee weapon, but weapon switching speed is slow when you're lugging around a huge, first-of-its-kind automatic. The grenades are devastating, but as I mentioned, the fuse timers can be iffy, and melee weapons can be terrifying when used correctly. But it's not that scary when you see them running right at you and you have time to line up a shot and hit them. You can only serpentine so much when you're in a trench. If you want to have the World War I version of Doom Guy as your play experience, I suggest picking up the Assault and leveling them up. But always remember, you have your weaknesses and be prepared to counteract them. Where the Assault was all about being the frontline terror either by holding an area or pushing into it with devastating guns, Engineers do sort of the same thing but completely differently. Early on, Engineers will be seen to be built for defense. That's because they have the unique ability to construct items on the map. This can completely change the flow of battle. Put a few sandbags in a trench, and when enemies push in, they're going to have to climb over to try and get to you, allowing you to set up shots and take them down as they're climbing. Or, if you prefer, you can put barbed wire over chokeholds. Enemies can cut this down, but it takes time, and if they try to push through it, they're going to take damage. Combining these two elements allow you to set up areas that become near inhospitable toward an attack. But at the same time, an offensive engineer can be used. Engineers have the ability to set up the heavy machine guns that are littered around the map. This means that if you're a defender, of course you're going to build them to try and shoot into the enemy approaching on you. But if you happen to be on the attacking side, you manage to make a good push that's about to crumble, there might be a heavy machine gun right by you that you can build up, and suddenly they're not taking this area back. The ability to build cover in the form of sandbags and sniper shields mean you can set up areas where a good shot can hold the area, or can keep the enemy from reinforcing while they themselves are behind cover. But don't worry, engineers are not all about building up defenses or points to push from. There's a sapper build to the engineer where they're all about explosives and tearing everything down. Engineers get the ability to have some very heavy explosives they can throw out, dealing massive damage. Combine that with a assault, and you have a class that's refilling grenades and doing a ton of damage with them. Not only that, their tool already disassemble things quickly, but with certain perks they can disassemble even faster, or even place bombs on objectives quicker, as well as let them explode faster, meaning they can be a terrifying unit that can take a position and destroy it quickly. While the engineer does have access to all the rifles that like a rifleman would have minus the gas-powered grenade, they don't really get to do much, unfortunately, when it comes to combat in that sense. They're more about changing the battlefield to their favor. Let me tell you, there's some maps that a good engineer is terrifying, because once you push up to take that enemy territory, you're now facing 5 barbed wires and sandbags that you have to crawl through and cut through to get to where you need to go, all while there's an engineer on the HMG he just built laughing, waiting for you to come around the corner. There's not much more to the engineer class, and I do enjoy it. A lot of their challenges revolve around killing enemies with HMGs or mortars, and those can be a little challenging unless you have a friend helping you out. So it can be hard to level them up and unlock some of their later stuff, but I highly recommend them on defense. There's nothing more fun than just building an area and saying, come on, try and take it. It can also be really interesting to have a hard place to push from, and you suddenly build up some sandbags and sniper shields, and now finally your men are able to take the shots they need to clear the area and get forward. I would almost call the engineer the thinking man's class, because with strategy you'll do a lot more than a good shot. There's just something about the video game sniper class that seems to attract players in FPSs. I've seen it in every game I've played whenever it's come to being an online shooter. I was once a big fan of Overwatch, and I've seen a lot of people drift into Widowmaker, either hitting headshots or missing every single one. Didn't matter, there's just some sort of allure to it. And I get it, hitting an enemy from very far away repeatedly on multiple enemies without missing not only feels great, but then your team, your squad, your army, whatever, gets to walk up unopposed, and it's all because of your work while you were so far away no one even noticed you. The Marksman gives you the ability to live out that fantasy if you're the one person who gets the scoped weapon when you unlock it. That's right, only one sniper on a team, which makes sense. If you had 3 talented snipers, you're either never going to be able to hold a point or never be able to push forward because everyone will be getting picked off. There is a very aggressive bullet drop in Isonzo, and ballistics try to work relatively realistically, and from my interactions it at least seems what I would assume to be realistic. I'm not a gun expert, even though I'm an American. Isn't that crazy? But what happens if you're not the one that gets the scoped weapon? What is the Marksman if not the iconic sniper ideal that we all hold close to our heart? Well, they can be a lot of things. You still get the ability to be quicker aiming and have a better accuracy than the normal Rifleman, which automatically sets you apart. You also get a nifty little ability perk that allows you to reload quicker, which can be life or death when everything is bolt action or revolvers. Also, the Marksmen get a revolver when other classes such as the Rifleman do not, meaning you have a backup option in the trenches if you're not the one with the scope. You can also get a perk where you have body armor on, making body shots less effective. Don't get me wrong, you can still die to them, but you're a little tougher to kill. Aside from that, you can go full sniper build. You don't even have to have the scope for this. They have a perk where they reduce gun sway and increase accuracy when laying down. That means that you can get into the right position and cover it. So if you're attacking, you can prevent enemies from coming in and taking back their objective or defusing the bomb. Or if you're defending, you can find a nice little corner and make sure no one gets into your territory. The Marksman is the simplest of the classes while being the hardest to play because it is all about accuracy. If you're not that accurate and you're not the one with the scope, then you're basically just playing a Rifleman not living up to its full potential. If you are really bad at aiming and you do have the scope, you're just failing your job completely. However, if you do have amazing accuracy, even if you're running the trenches, you can be a terror to deal with. And if you happen to be really good at aiming and have the scope, you can be a monster. There's been matches I played online where I just appear to fall over dead. The camera attempts to zoom out and show me where I got shot from, but it's just showing me a mountain range. I have no idea. The Marksman is a fun class, but it can be disappointing because we all have this idea in our head that we're very talented, and this class will very quickly tell you if you are or aren't. Personally, I like to just put on the perk where I reload quicker, pull out the revolver, and turn into the World War I version of an Italian cowboy. So if you can't make it with this class, that's okay. It's also a good class to practice with to get to that point so that one day you can be the sniper you believe you are. This is the class I'm going to cover last. It's technically not the last class in the list. The Mountaineer is probably the most unique and customizable class in the game. While it starts out very one-sided, you could call them a scout at the beginning. You get binoculars, you get the ability to sprint faster and get up to higher altitudes quicker. Your job being to spot. You can look through the binoculars, see enemies and constantly mark them and hope you don't get shot while helping out your mortar teams or just officers know where to push or put down flares. However, as you unlock more levels and get more challenges completed, your class starts to change. It's subtle at first. You get the ability to build a periscope. This has a better zoom, a wider range, and allows you to mark just a little bit quicker. This means you can cover wider areas and help really set up attacks or defenses. Then you get the flare gun, the only other class to have it other than the officer, but their flares are not for setting up artillery or bombing runs. Instead, their flares reveal enemies in the area where they're at when the flare goes off. But just like the officer, if you fire them 2 consecutively, it gets a buff. This one I do fire consecutively because the buff is that it increases mortar accuracy in the area. Whenever someone's aiming a mortar, it takes time to pinpoint where the shot's going to hit, and if you're aiming in an area where a Mountaineer has shot 2 flares, Guess what? That time is cut in half. But then the Mountaineer gets even weirder and even changes more. Up to this point, they've been the scout, like I've said. They've been all about locating enemies, setting up attacks, gathering information. Now they become a Beyblade Berserker, because you get access to the canteen, which is interesting. This means now you have the ability to lead charges. You can run right alongside the assault and give them backup. You can run to an area and start putting up flares so that enemies are spotted much further away than you could reach before. You can run from cover to cover. You can run to a weird area and set up your periscope or start looking through your binoculars. But then they change even more, because they get access to a melee weapon, the only other class to get it other than the assault. They get the pickaxe, and let me tell you, there's nothing more terrifying than someone who seems to be on World War I's version of meth as they're running at you full speed swinging an axe non-stop. They're scarier than the assaults. It doesn't stop there, because they also get to steal a little bit of the officer's ability again. While their flares don't allow them to call in things, they get their own version of the whistle, but it doesn't allow quicker respawns. Instead, it's a war bugle. You know, like a bugle horn, not the little crunchy things you eat. Am I saying that right? Bugle? Beagle. Weird, fancy, twisty horn. That thing. Whenever it's played, soldiers near them speed up and get a stamina buff, meaning a huge charge is coming your way. Mountaineer starts off unassuming and seeming like a boring class where you just sit back and spot things. The class you would play if you want to be like, yes, friend Greg, I will spot for you so you can get your mortar kills as an engineer and I will help you out, don't worry. And slowly becomes a psychopath running through the trenches with an ice axe chopping people up or playing musical notes to lead the entire army forward like they're the frontline officer. The Mountaineer is a fun and very wacky class. I feel like they just took a bunch of ideas that work in other classes, changed them up, and stuck them here. And it makes sense that there would be something akin to like a scout mountain climbing class, since the Isonzo Rivers are situated in an Alps-like altitude. So don't underestimate this class when you first see it like I did. When I looked at it, all I saw was someone whose job was to get information, and then I learned my lesson at the end of someone else's axe. A lot of fun once you're able to grind up those perks and other weapons. Now, we've talked about the classes. Have I sold you yet? Am I going to see you in one of those lobbies? Are we going to play together? Maybe not. Every game has classes. I mean, look at hero shooters. Each hero is its own class in its own unique way. So what makes being able to play the same thing as everyone else special? Well, I want to talk about the beauty of the battlefield, which is a weird thing to say. While the graphics are nothing so amazing as to kill your computer like Monster Hunter Wilds do, or make you forget that you exist like other games in the modern day, they are quite serviceable at creating beautiful vistas. You have beautiful areas full of vineyards, you have rivers, you have high altitude mountains covered in snow, you have desolate and creepy caves, well-worn trenches, you have areas where you can see the effect of battle. There are no horses in the game, but you can find the corpses of horses and their riders. You can find destroyed artillery. You can find environmental soldier bodies that are laying around. It all paints the scene of this beautiful land that is ravaged by war. It goes beyond that though. The voice acting is amazing. It's a bit memeable at times because the soldiers call out their own things depending on what you do. If you're near an enemy and you're looking at it, there's a chance that your soldier will yell out in their own language about the enemy. I don't know how many times I've heard the words "ataka," but it also adds a little bit to the realism of the game. You call in a bombing run, your officer's going to call out in their own language about the bombing run. I'm not going to try and repeat it because I don't speak any of the languages in this game, but it's a nice touch. But the voice acting goes further than that. When people die, it sounds horrifying. Some of the death screams go on and on. They will keep screaming out their last, and even if you get immediately taken out and respawn, sometimes you can still hear them going. The voice actors gave it their all, and it's impressive. Not only that, death in this game can be brutal. Dismemberment is a thing, and it can be very gory to see someone explode into pieces in front of you, or to see them get shot or hit with a melee weapon and a limb come off. It really adds to the darkness of the battlefield. You'll be pushing yourself through many environments. Those environments can change drastically. You can suddenly be moving through a field full of barbed wire to climb through the destroyed ruins of a building just to have the enemy officer call in a gas strike on you. Now you're seeing the world through your gas mask because everything's clouded by the gas itself. Seeing what's usually bots, but maybe other players trying to be brave, grabbing their throats and dying as they breathe in too much. Bombing runs are terrifying and rapid. You don't really have a warning. Artillery can strike at any moment. Seeing flares go up in the air warn you that something bad could be coming, or maybe your allies have been spotted. The guns all sound differently, each weapon sounding unique and functioning unique with their own reloading animations. Melee weapons can be devastating. You can sort of feel the force behind a bayonet thrust. The melee weapons at the Mountaineer and the Assault seem a little wacky because they have no cooldown and you feel like a spinning top, but there's still weight behind even those strikes. The maps are all designed to be different in combat too. Don't get me wrong, some can be frustrating. There's some maps where you have to push through caves to get to an objective, and you can bet the defenders are going to put so much barbed wire and sandbags up that you're going to have to dig your way through. And then if you manage to dig your way through, you're going to have to deal with enemies that have a better respawn, and you're going to have bots that can just one-shot you if they decide to. You're going to have a flood of enemies coming towards you. But that feels like war. And it's satisfying when you push through those hard-to-take defense maps as an attacker. The same way, sometimes you have maps as a defender where it just feels like you cannot win. The enemy are coming from all sides. They have so much cover. What are you going to do? And you just keep firing, hoping that you can take down enough of them that matters. I picked up Isonzo on a whim. I picked it up because I saw a post of it, I think on Twitter, X, whatever Elon's calling it these days. I don't care, it's Twitter. Or maybe it was Blue Sky, the much better website. You can go follow me on my socials, check the account on my YouTube. And I was interested. I want a Battlefield shooter, but I dislike games like Call of Duty where you spawn, run forward, shoot, call in a perk, die, spawn, run forward, shoot. There's no thought, it's just shoot and do. It's all about reaction. Not saying there's no skill or fun there, it's just not for me. I barely got to touch Battlefield 1 when it came out. I picked it up on Game Pass, and at that time all the content had come out. So there were people running around with what they called automatic experimental weapons that I don't think were ever actually used in World War I, just because the fan base were complaining that they needed automatic. By having everything be bolt action, semi-automatic, or just the fewest of automatics and they're so hard to aim, the game is balanced in that way. And even if you're not a good shot and don't have the ability to quickly line up a good shot with your rifle, there's other ways you can win. Setting up defenses, calling in airstrikes, running in with a melee weapon, providing covering fire. And even if that is too hard for you to do, there are bots swarming the map. You are going to get killed. Even if it's a map where you get destroyed utterly, you're going to have a nice, decent score to at least make you feel good at the end of all of it. I may have picked up Isonzo on a whim, but it's been a lot of fun. Every now and then I see a server that's completely full, 48 people going at it. That's a lot of fun. The community is pretty silly too most times. Don't get me wrong, you're always going to get your bad apple in the bunch. That's bound to happen. It's unavoidable. But I've had such silly conversations on there. And I've always seen most people at the end of a match give a nice friendly GG. I don't see any of that stuff you see in other games that are more competitive, like a GG easy or oh you got stomped. I see every now and then people being like, oh this team was trash, or why didn't you whistle? I made this video to inform people about how great Isonzo is, about how it's worth your time. It goes on sale a lot. It's what I would call a AA game at best. They've only put out 3 games, and I don't think Blackmail has a lot of fame attached to them. Isonzo's the best thing they've put out. It's a lot of fun customizing each soldier with their own unique apparel, getting weapons that are tied to specific groups, making new meshed builds. I don't think you would have told somebody when you were playing the Marksman that you were going in with a speed reloading perk and a revolver to play a cowboy. We live in a world where a lot of AAA games come out unfinished, and they'll finish in the next few months, but at that point they're dropping DLC, they're dropping cosmetics, they're dropping season passes, battle passes. It's because the company needs the money. It has to have a higher amount made than it did the previous quarter. But when you get to games like this, you get to discover a passion. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's some people in every company that are money-minded, but you can tell these people made this game to create a game about World War I that people could enjoy. And it's not your common World War I of US, Europe, and Germany. It's a unique perspective with unique weapons in a very unique setting. If you're looking for a new online shooter to pick up, I highly recommend it, because at the end of the day, even if you have bad internet connection, you're bad at aiming, you can just create a private lobby, set it to just yourself, maybe some nearby friends, and just fight against the bots. You don't even have to win, just grind challenges, unlock new weapons. There's always progression to be made. The only downside I can really give this game is it has a lot of cosmetic DLCs and they feel a little pricey for what you're getting. Don't get me wrong, some of the outfits and the additional items are very cool. There's some very cool facial hair and additional pipes and bandages and stuff, but it does feel like it costs a little more than it's worth. But I'm willing to forgive it because they're such a small company. If you like this video, please give it a like, and hey, if you want to see more, subscribe. I'm working a lot harder on YouTube now. I finally got my pop filter for my mic. I'm working better on audio, trying to get to mixing it right, you know, getting a good balance. I want to focus more on entertainment and obscure games. If you've seen my previous videos, you know that I've kind of lost Helldivers 2. And if you haven't seen that video, you can click on the link right above and go watch it and see how I'm sadly having to give up one of my favorite games. I also stream almost every single day at 4 p.m. EST over at twitch.tv/reasonable_rex. I play a plethora of games: Monster Hunter Wilds, Avowed. On Tuesdays, me and my buddy Scruff get together and we just pick something to play. We've played everything from Played Up to Dark Tide to, oh god, to Minecraft. I'm not a Minecraft fan, but he made me play it. You can watch me play. You can watch me suffer. I even play older games like Fable 2. So if you're looking for somewhere to hang out, relax, and just talk to a silly dino, stop by my Twitch. And if you're looking for more videos like this, subscribe to the YouTube. I've got a lot I'm working on. I do put it out at a slow pace. Either way, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, bye!